When I created this podcast about a year and a half ago, the main thing I was interested in is learning how people had the guts to become an entrepreneur. As a guy who had always kind of fallen into the corporate landscape, had always said I was just going to always be a W 2 guy, getting a job from a company, being provided that experience, but then eventually having the nerve to go out and step on my own and to bet on my own. That journey of how somebody goes from who they are at one point to be able to do that is something that's always interested me. A lot of our conversation today is going to be around that with Daniel. Daniel, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks.
So, just to kind of set the table for the audience, tell us a little bit about who Daniel is today and what do you do in general?
Absolutely. So I'm Daniel. I've had a kind of a rich background of different things. I was a professional musician and music director for a long time, then got into web development, marketing, leadership in an agency, and now I just recently founded a consultancy that's working with agencies. I like to say I want to help agencies who still love agency owners who still love their agencies get more out of it.
So, ideally, what's your ideal customer look like today? And I know that you're still fairly new at this, so you're probably learning as you go, but what does that ideal agency look like that you're trying to help?
Yeah, so you're right to say that I'm still figuring a little bit of that out, and even in terms of the positioning and messaging that and how I want to reach who I want to reach. But the primary target audience that I'm centering my messaging around is agency owners who have some kind of project-based agency, so web development, video production, and in some cases full service marketing agencies who are somewhere between 750K to 5 million, maybe a little bit more than that. That means that they're at a stage of their agency life where they have some people working with them. So what I have to offer works for solopreneurs, works for solo founders, but it starts to make the most difference when you've got a few specialists on your team, you've got some account managers or project managers. Because what I've seen is that when you're early stage, what you need most is revenue generation. And when you've got a little bit of success under your belt, then if you haven't built a foundation of strong leadership and really well defined processes and optimized workflows, then you can only ride, the revenue train so long before you need to start figuring out what's wrong with your profitability. So
It's funny
that's who I'm
because
helping. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say it's funny because it sounds like the way you made that explanation, and I know, and likely a lot of our audience knows that the hardest thing as a agency owner or an entrepreneur is the revenue generation side of the business. The way you said it there was like, yeah, like the revenue side's easy. Just once you get that part figured out,
No.
then you bring me in, and then we can kind of tighten the screws in. Obviously, a big part of my day to day and a big part of the type of organizations I help are the ones that have a great product. They've got a good service. They've got good ability to execute, but they are just struggling in finding enough customers who they can sell. So, are you seeing that being a challenge with a lot of your customers, or they had that challenge, they just overcame it?
So what I've seen a lot is what I would call the accidental CEO, a web developer or a designer who got into development, in 10, 15 years ago. They started building clients. They started slowly bringing on one team member at a time until it became a little bit harder for them to handle. So they have found a way through that earliest stages, through referrals, through hopefully building a more repeatable client acquisition system to where they are seeing some success in that area. I say that about revenue generation because um, demand generation, revenue generation is not my expertise, and there are go-to-market strategists and go-to-market consultants who can help folks like that are in that position far beyond what I can do. But what I specialize in is when you've got this sort of mess of mess of an operations, mess of an agency where you've got clients coming in, you got projects coming in. Maybe there's not a streamlined process to get through them, but you start to wonder where your profits have all gone. So that's that kind of difference between somebody who is struggling for revenue generation and who is seeing projects come through and just needs to figure out why they're not sitting as pretty as they thought they would be.
What is the answer to that? Is it their staff? Is it their processes? I mean, what do you commonly see? And I know it's probably every
Yeah.
scenario you step into is slightly different, but what do you think the common thing is?
So a lot of times an agency owner will stay up at night and they're thinking about how they need to get another developer or need to get another marketer or they need to get a better project manager because they're getting asked for all of the details or they're getting, called up on their vacation and they're not able to ever take a break because it's all coming back to them. And so they think I just need a better team member or I just need a better, developer or designer, someone who can handle that. I need to hire a director. And maybe that's true. But a lot of times, what you're doing is you're bringing someone new into something that's just chaotic from the start. And you're just hoping that they can pick it up where you've left it. What I like to think about is 2 sides of of a coin, where one side you have the tactical and practical, and on the other side you have the leadership. So when I work with an agency, what I'm looking at is how are your systems set up? How well are your workflows documented? Can people come into your organization and pick up where someone else left off? Or is it all reliant on someone's internal knowledge? And then what are we doing with communication? How are we speaking with clients? How are you working on your communication with your internal team? Because in my belief, there's an area for a win-win-win. That's a win for the owner of the agency, a win for their team, and a win for their clients. And when an agency is willing to focus on the processes and the leadership, then I really believe that you can get that.
Yeah, I mean, I find so often, I mean, one of the biggest challenges I come into an organization and I'm trying to explain to the founder the value of them getting out of that revenue seat, and especially when they don't come with a revenue background, right? They are a person who was that web developer. They're a person who was a creator or a technology developer. I work with a lot of companies who've developed these AI platforms and companies in today's landscape, and they're not people who've ever sold before. They're not experts at that, and they are the person who sells it because they know it the best in their business, but they really find it difficult because they don't have a revenue hiring background. And how do I bring in the right salesperson? What do I look for? How do I bring somebody in who's going to care about my business and care about my revenue the same way? And I think that's always the biggest challenge, which is understanding you're never going to find somebody in any place of your business who's going to care as much about your business as you do. And then secondarily, how can you bring in those experts? A big part of my business where today we've scaled back down to where we have a less than 15 people in my company today, but less than a year ago I had over 90 employees in my company, and um, we had to make a very sudden adjustment technically because at first when we started we had a bunch of loyal generalists, and then we gathered a very large team. We took on a lot of major clients, but kind of to your point of what you're saying is we found that the scalability with that model became very limited. It cost us a lot more to do, a lot less under that model. But then when we maintained some of the most loyal generalists, but then we started bringing in technical specialists and really learned how to bring in people to cover the gaps we didn't have naturally. That's really where the business was able to substantially grow with significantly less headcount. Do you see a version of that in your consulting as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, um, we've kind of like, as technology shifts, we've kind of entered into a different realm of how things used to operate. And I'm mostly thinking about marketing agencies, web development agencies, where, you used to just think about it scaling by just adding another person, and I think about a lot of times the the pod method of developing a team. And so your only mechanism for growth is to simply do more and more and more sort of stacked on top of each other. And I think what you're getting at is finding ways to scale more exponentially through specializing, through making things more efficient, and through finding ways to deliver what you're delivering, without necessarily even having to have more and more and more people all the time. So I think we're in a place right now where a lot of agency owners are rethinking how they've operated in that way. Along the way, though, we can't forget the human parts of it, and we can't forget the parts that make it worth it to the client. So when you're in a, marketing agency that's serving clients over and over again, uh, I think sometimes it's easy to get rushed into upending those services or changing that up all the time. But like I say, I want agency owners to make sure that they're keeping their clients' interests at heart all the while as well.
Yeah, what I'm most speaking about is, and I just put it into my own example, is me being a sales and revenue guy. I didn't know a lot about marketing. So I
Mhm.
could learn about marketing. I didn't know a lot about it. There
Yeah.
was a part where I wanted to move into productizing my knowledge instead of just having a service offering, for scalability. And so I needed to then hire developers and bring in people who were like experts at creating and developing. That's not my background. So I needed to then hire a lead developer to then build his own team and to have a
Sure.
stake into that process. And that was very, very much a learning curve. And obviously I sit on the other side of that seat with a lot of founders where I'm trying to help them understand that their growth is limited when they're the one trying to do all the sales, when they're the one trying
Mhm.
to call the leads, present the leads, close the deals. And that always will limit their ability to become the CEO they ultimately want to become. Their title says they're a CEO, but they're just an owner of one doing many different titles in a sense. So, I mean, a lot of times my struggle is trying to help these founders understand that that approach is more in control of that founder, but it also is probably the
Mhm.
thing that's truly limiting their growth.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you get them from the point where they realize that they need to do that to where they're actually ready to where the things are organizationally ready to take that step?
I think, and this is just a sales process, it's a sales technique, but I think sales is not, to me, is not what a lot of people think sales is. I think my job is not persuading them to do something. My job is to ask the right questions so that they can understand their own need, not necessarily to
Mhm.
implant or convince them of a need they don't have or they don't want or they don't need, but making sure that they maybe look at the glass from the other side where they can get a different perspective and understand the value behind that. So in most cases, it's just about sitting down, asking the right questions, understanding where their gaps are and having them understand where the gap is. And then hopefully I'm the person who they believe is the person who can solve those problems for them.
I think the where you and I share a similar um challenge or something we can help founders with is in defining what it is that could be even handed off. So in your case, if you've got a founder that is the sole salesperson in their agency or in their organization, uh, they might realize, yeah, I want to be out of the seller seat, but every time I sell something different. So I imagine that you work with them to be able to define what the things are that they're actually selling in a way where that could be scaled to a sales team, a sales or a sales organization within their business. And then that way, it's very similar to the kind of work that I'm doing with agency owners who have been for years the primary person driving what gets delivered or how it gets delivered, and they need to be out of that operational seat as well as out of that primary seller seat. So if that thing that they're delivering changes every time they sell it or every time they scope it out, then it is almost impossible to effectively hand that off to somebody else without it breaking apart, or in some cases, without someone else being willing to step up and figure it out.
Is a big part of what you're attempting to prepare these agencies that you work with, is the part of it a preparation um for funding and acquisition, or is it just for growth, internal growth?
Primarily for internal growth. Like I said up top, I love to work with agency owners who still love their agencies. So a lot of folks are moving toward trying to be acquired or looking for an exit or looking for funding for like a venture capital. I'm not so much interested in that angle. I think there's a lot of folks who would be great in that angle, but the folks uh, that I'm able to help the most, that I'm drawn to working with, we all kind of have folks that uh, we are drawn to, that we enjoy working with the most, are folks who are still in love with their day to day working with in their agency, but they want to figure out how they can take it to the next level.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Now shifting gears slightly, when we look at your business, we project 5 years from now. What are your goals? Like, what do you want your business to ultimately be and become?
I don't know what the words for it are, but I will be happy with in 5 years if I'm just able to help agencies do what I think they have the potential to do while taking care of myself and my family. So the growth dreams, visions that I have for this are that it would be kind of a self-sustaining solo consultancy that I'm able to, grow comfortably, where that I can take care of myself.
In an ideal world, when you provide services to an organization, I think there's a couple different models. I believe in one of the two models, but there's either a model where a company might hire you and then you serve in a very light capacity, but more of a long term strategist who's there with them, meeting with them weekly or monthly or quarterly to make sure that they have a plan and then are executing the plan. Another one is come in, shake the world up, but you're out of there in 3 months, and ultimately, if you've done it correctly, they don't need you anymore after that. Maybe they bring you back in every year and kind of reassess where you are. What model are you kind of ideally looking for? You looking to just kind of have 10 clients that are long-term clients that you kind of are able to juggle them all? Or are you looking to come in, shake it up, big project, move on, next guy?
I'll answer your question just by kind of telling you what I've been doing and also vulnerably saying I'm still sorting through kind of how that works for me, how that works best for me. What I've been doing the last several months is I'll meet with a agency owner. We'll discover what they're needing, what their goals are, and what they're struggling with. And then we'll start with a full audit of their processes. And when I say that, I mean like get me into your Slack, get me into your ClickUp or your Asana. Let me see how you're talking to people. Let me listen to some call recordings with clients, with especially if you've got account managers, project managers, things like that. And then I'm going to look through what you've got documented and how your processes are working. Out of that audit, I'm going to build a roadmap for how we can get them back on track. So that probably means taking a look at some strategic plans that the agencies had, what their numbers are in terms of utilization, in terms of, employees as compared to revenue, things like that, and look at the overall health of the business. Then I'm going to provide what I think are the top areas for growth. That's balanced against what I call the 8 systems. So I've got kind of a framework that I work through that informs how I do the audit. It informs what we put into the roadmap. Then they have the ability to take that at that point and implement it themselves. And in some cases, that agency owner is ready to take that to their director of operations or take that upon themselves to implement, or they can work with me for a for an implementation sprint that's going to be 3 to 6 months depending on they what they have the capacity to do, and then we move into a more long-term advisory role. So we front load a lot of that work in a sort of done with you capacity, because what I found is that if all I do is have a weekly call or a monthly call and listen and give advice, then you're just paying for a conversation. So I do want to see uh, a big change up front if they're really trying to take that seriously, but I wanna get into a relationship with them where that we can keep optimizing and keep tweaking that over time.
So, um, it makes sense. And I asked that question because and I'm guessing, Daniel, you'll go through this evolution too.
Yeah,
When I say evolution, that doesn't mean like you'll get better at what you do, but your business will change. In
absolutely.
the 3 years that I've been doing it, I came in with a very specific plan. My original business was a sales academy, and then I didn't intend to get into consulting. Consulting kind of fell into my lap as I started placing a lot of people that I was training. And then a lot of people really wanted me to offer a full staffing solution. I did that heavily. Like when I was talking about last year, I had over 80 employees. A lot of those were us outsourcing and staffing SDRs, account executives, virtual assistants in a variety of different ways. I intended to innovate out of using staff and creating AI to be able to do a lot of that, and especially since a lot of the aspect was fairly AI creatable. I try to create a software process to evolve after that. I eventually decided not to go that route, scratched it, moved a different direction. And now I'm leaning much heavier on the consulting side, where in my mind, I think where I offer the most value is where I specifically intentionally try to get in and then get out. And I think
Mhm,
that one of the biggest issues with consulting, at least on the sales side, is that people sell a dependency on me or a dependency on a
mhm,
person like me to the success of your business. And in an ideal world, I would like to, instead of providing the fish, which I did for many years, is actually teaching you how to fish, like teaching you, who do you look for? How do you hire your own sales leader? How do you develop a sales culture and organization that can then grow from within? Can I do it? Sure, but why pay me and my exorbitant fees when I can teach you how to do it yourself? That's a more rewarding thing. It allows me to go help more people at the same time. So, it's been a big evolution for me, kind of going from where I'm at to that. And it sounds like you still are kind of figuring out where your bread will be buttered over time, but just I would say don't make your decision today and then
yeah.
make the mistake that so many people do, which is I'm gonna stick to my original plan and not adjust towards it, which it sounds like you're already going down that road.
I'll tell you a story. My very first client, so I've been working with, a head of operations that was with me at the last agency that I worked at full time, and so she came with me to do this venture. Our very first client, they were also at the same time as wanting to optimize their processes, were looking for a project manager as they were starting to grow a little bit. So we decided to roll in some weekly project management hours that she could fulfill. She had the capacity to do that, the time to do it, and it it immediately was exactly what you're talking about, where, yeah, it went really well, for them because we were providing, like, our level of project management in an agency that
Yep.
hadn't had that before.
Right.
To the tune of, as soon as our engagement was up, they did decide to keep working together long term with just her doing that project management role, which is really good for them, and it's a bit of a learning lesson for me that, I mean, it worked out great. It certainly was not the way I envisioned a consulting engagement going, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like where I was at last year when I decided to cut my staff down, it's because I fired a couple of clients. I fired them because the amount of time that was going in to that was restricting my ability to scale, restricting my ability to take on more clients because I was capped with me selling my time. And I think that as an entrepreneur, at least as a consulting entrepreneur, you got to be the most careful of. If you can outsource your energy, your brain, your resources, your knowledge, great. But when you start outsourcing your time, then you run into limitations of what you can do with that. I'm in the process, and we actually just went live with our sales grading and coaching platform. So any company out there that has a sales team is making calls we can actually integrate directly into your CRM, and all of your calls get integrated into our call grading system. It grades every single call on how you did with the gatekeeper, the connection, how the conversation went, how you overcame objections. Every single call, it grades it. It provides you direct coaching. And for managers who are running a team, it kind of creates all that. That is my hope, is the thing that I'm going to be able to put into a lot of customers' hands, that I'll be able to make the same impact at many different places at the same time without me having to be in listening to those calls every day. So I took all of my knowledge, downloaded it into a platform, and now people can use that process automatically into their business for a pretty inexpensive cost. So it's interesting. Now, one other next step is, how do you take your business today and scale it? How do you get more customers? How do you get more visibility? How do you get more clients? What is your pathway and plan to do that as it sits today?
As it stands today, I was just thinking about this while you were sharing about your content, the scoring system, about a guy I'm following online, Greg Hickman. A lot of marketing insights from his endeavors. He used to run an agency. Now he's doing consulting for businesses, for small businesses and agencies. He talks about having three concentric circles: your audience, your customers, and then your clients. So for me, that looks like continuing to grow my audience online. That's LinkedIn and some other channels. I'm moving into doing long form video content on YouTube to do kind of what you said, download my knowledge into a way that other people can get to it without having to spend that time talking to me. And then customers, um, providing some types of content that could be paid. So in that basically foot in the door kind of offer where people can get their teeth into something a little more dense than what they can get in a YouTube video. And then from there, that's kind of a funnel of nurturing into clients and to actually consulting clients. So that is theoretical right now. What I've been doing for 4 months, as I've been doing this in earnest, is essentially one-on-one networking. And the contacts that I've gained have simply been through my online network and people that I know. So I've begun to move into some of those marketing channels, but it's all still very new right now.
What is the next step for you to, it sounds like you have a good plan. What's the next step for you to move towards those? Because I mean, I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that helped my business jump drastically was putting out consistent content. Putting out
Mhm.
consistent content. Not only it helped me, like a podcast allows my network to grow, right? If you're leveraging the majority of your clients from your internal network, this gives me an opportunity to be able to talk to more people, expand my network, grow my platform. The podcast allows me to get my message in front of my audience, but also my guest audience. Um, Generally, I would say, I mean, a good percentage of people who come onto our podcast, we end up doing some business together in some capacity at some point in time. And even though that's not my intention behind the podcast, it is a natural thing. But I would say the thing that's the most valuable out of having a podcast like this is the volume of both short form and long form content that comes out just drastically increases the credibility behind who you are. Putting out written content on LinkedIn is good, but when somebody can hear you deliver that and talk about it and think through it and execute it, man, me sending out a message or me asking somebody for a favor or saying, "Hey, would you like to be on the podcast?" The credibility factor jumped drastically when they got to go to my page and got to see the volume of content, the quality of the content. It just really unlocked a lot of things for me. So I'm one of those guys that kind of unapologetically try to scream from the mountaintops. Like, unless you are so busy you could not take on more clients, the biggest and best thing I would tell you to do: start a podcast, create some sort of webinar series, use that long form content to create a bunch of short form content, which will create conversations and relationships.
That is exactly what the next step is. If you saw my task list, you'd see what I've got on there is this for marketing is essentially get those first few videos up on YouTube. So the way I plan on doing it is it's as if I were doing a webinar, but just pre-recorded for YouTube, 15 to 25-minute per on a topic that dives deep into one of these 8 systems. I think the thing that I'll struggle with is not being afraid to be repetitive because I know that like people aren't just listening to everything all at once. So there's no harm in saying the same thing in different ways at different places. So that literally is my next step.
Um, is that something you're gonna do today? Something you're gonna do tomorrow? Something you're gonna do a
I
year from
love it.
now? Because like,
I love it.
the next step
I
is
love
go,
it.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I mean, this is I don't know if how this looks to you. This is the best my camera's ever looked. I had a video producer come help me get set up. I've got a script going. It is literally the next step within the next 2 weeks.
That's awesome. I talk to clients about this all the time. Like one of the things I talk to them about to help them increase their revenue is how they market themselves. Do they have an outlet to get their opinions out? And there's generally two things that stop people from making this move that you're about to make. Number one, I don't have the time. We all know that's
Hmm.
bullshit. You got the time. If it's
Right.
important enough, you'll make the time for it. Number two is I don't know. Well, it's kind of three things. I wouldn't know how to get guests consistent on the podcast. And everybody has an immediate network, but man, once you get past that immediate network, it's difficult to find guests. And then number three is I don't really know how to do a bunch of video editing. What if I want to put up content out? I want to make sure the content's
Right.
quality and those things. Are any of those three things stopping you or holding you back or delaying you at all in that? Because that's generally what I hear.
No, I think to speak completely plainly, I think the biggest thing is that sort of age old fear of just taking the plunge. That has been delaying me as much as it has been so far. It's also, there's a matter of like, what is the most important thing right now in this moment, which is simply a matter of weighing what is what's truly important to me. But no, I know that I have the time. I know that I'm not held back by the technological parts of, getting the video recorded, getting it, cut up or edited into different places. Either I'll do it or I'll have somebody do it for me.
Got it. Yeah. It makes total sense what you're saying. And like I said, why I asked that question is because that's the thing that a lot of people get stuck up on. And I try to talk about that as much as possible because there are easy platforms, technology, and that. What I've also found is a lot of people are just kind of that paralysis by analysis thing where like they're just like, I want
Mhm.
it to be really good, so I don't want to put out,
Yeah.
shitty content. Newsflash, first couple ones you do, you're gonna look back
Yeah.
6 months from now and you're like, that was dog shit. You're going to get better, and the only way you get better is just by doing it. One other piece of advice I'd give you, and all the clients we manage podcasts for, we manage marketing advertising for, I tell them like go record at least 5 to 10 episodes before you release any one of them. Go record them all. And make
Yeah.
sure you've got a consistent pathway to get guests. Make sure you got a consistent process on how you edit, exactly how you're going to distribute and execute the process. When you've got enough content out there, then start releasing it when you've got enough to be able to do it. I heard a statistic when we first started that I think like 95% of podcasts don't make it past the seventh episode.
Wow.
And so, like, for me, if knowing that, then create 8 before you ever
Yeah.
release one. And that way you're never like starting a pattern and a path that you can't maintain, but you create that pattern, you create that repetition behind the scenes until you've got a clear repetition that you can maintain past that point of stickiness. So there's that. What's the main thing you're working on? Like what's your biggest goal by the end of the year right now that you're working on, Daniel?
Biggest goal I'm working on right now, um, in in addition to the content and everything, I've got several other speaking engagements in person type things that I'm going to be doing in the next couple of months. Those are, as you can imagine, are big things for people to overcome. So I'm using those as, continuous practice grounds for getting this content out there to people. Um, And then it's kind of at this point, I've got a couple clients that are rolling off. So it's about getting those next few clients lined up as well.
Nice. All right. So to wrap it up here, if you had kind of one piece of advice for somebody else who maybe is sitting in the seat you were sitting in a year ago, before you made the decision to jump over here and do what you're doing, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give them forecasting who you were to who you are today?
Don't do it alone. That's my biggest piece of advice. Don't, even if you are going to start solo, stand on the shoulders of people who have gone before you. Listen to the folks who've got advice for you. Even in this conversation, I get a lot of value and meaning out of the conversations that we've had and the input and advice you've got to give. So my number one thing is, don't think you've got to do it alone. Don't give in to the feeling that you have got to figure it out by yourself, and you don't have to start something that's never been started before. So if something has worked for somebody else, it'll work for you.
Absolutely. I think just the start of believing in yourself, and the biggest piece of advice I give people is just start moving. So often
Yeah,
people just delay because they want to have everything be perfect. And I think the biggest problem of a perfect plan is that when you make a perfect plan, first off, you'll never make a perfect plan. And second off, you'll be never willing to adjust off that perfect plan when you've created a
right.
perfect plan. So you'll never have the agility to see what else is out there and where you need to make adjustments. So, for everybody who's watching, Daniel, we'll make sure we put all of the ways to get in contact with you through your
Great.
LinkedIn. And by the time this episode comes out, you're already going to have a YouTube channel with a bunch of videos on there. So they'll be able to go check out your YouTube videos as well. And is there any other better way for them to get in contact with you?
Nope, LinkedIn's great. Yep.
Perfect. Well, for all of you that are watching, obviously like, comment, follow, go to Daniel's channel, go check out his content, check out what he does. If you know anybody that he might be able to help out there, feel free to send over his information to your friends. It sounds like he'd be absolutely great at taking these agencies to the next level. For all of you guys, until next time, talk soon.